Hi friends, welcome to Beautifully Bookish Bethany. Today I have a book haul for you. Today is when I share all of the books that have come into my collection in the month of October. These typically are relatively sizable. This month is no different. I will say I have an unusually large number of books that were sent to me for review or gifted to me, so that's for sure more than usual. I of course have some books that I purchased, a few pre-orders, some books that I picked up at New York City Comic-Con this year, and some books that I got with store credit because I sold some books back to my local indie bookstore, and that's always fun. Buy stuff using store credit. So let's go ahead and dive in. I think because I have so many books that were sent to me from like authors and publishers and stuff, I'm gonna start with those. And I even have some packages that I haven't fully unboxed yet, which is not usually the case, so we get an unboxing today. It'll be fun. And why don't we begin with the thing that I was most excited about that was also probably most unexpected. I do actually have a TikTok video that I made unboxing this as well, so maybe I will link that, play part of it over here, because there is a clothing item in the box that I tried on, which was fun for that video. But this is a promo package for the latest Tristan Strong book, which is part of the PreOrders Presents line, and they sent me this giant box. I did not know this was coming to me and was very, very excited to get this in the mail. I mean, look at this box, it's beautiful and it's huge. So this is for Tristan Strong Keeps Punching. If you don't know, I love this series. I have already read the first 2 books in it, so I was thrilled about this. All right. This is the final book in the trilogy. The series is done. It follows a boy named Tristan Strong, who is a black boy from Chicago, who goes into this alternate world peppered with people from African mythology, from Black American mythology, and it's great. It's like such a wonderful, fun, interesting series that also in age-appropriate ways introduces like really important things. So I'm excited to read the final book. The first thing in here is this really awesome hoodie. It's this really comfy sweatshirt that says "Stay Strong." It does fit. I love it. It's awesome. Thank you so much to Disney. And then they sent me all 3 books in the series, which is so awesome. So thank you. This is exciting. So this is Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky. This one I've read and I do actually own a copy of, so I'm thinking I might do like a giveaway for this first book for anybody who doesn't already have it. I do not yet have book 2, so I'm really excited to now have that. Tristan Strong Destroys the World. And this is a series that I would for sure pass on to my kids as they get a little bit older. I feel like my oldest isn't quite ready for these yet, but they're very good. And then the latest one, Tristan Strong Keeps Punching, which I haven't read yet, but I'm very excited to. So huge thanks to Disney for sending those. And if you guys haven't checked out the series yet, please do. I really, really love these. They're among my favorite books in the entire line of PreOrders Presents books. The next one is a package from Macmillan. This I do think I knew was coming to me and I'm excited about it. Tor.com sent an arc of a book that is coming out next year. This goes on sale in February of 2022. It's called Redwood and Wildfire by Andrea Hairston. The premise of this sounds interesting, which I'll explain, but one thing that's kind of cool about it is this was previously published as a self-published book. It was from an indie author and they're now traditionally publishing it. Love, Survival, and the Hoodoo of the Blues. At the turn of the 20th century, Redwood, an African-American woman, and Aidan, a Seminole Irishman, journey from Georgia to Chicago, from haunted swampland to the city of the future. They are gifted performers and hoodoo conjurers struggling to come to terms with their own very personal trauma while calling up the wondrous world they imagine on stage and screen, on city streets, in front parlors, in wounded hearts. The power of hoodoo is the power of the community that believes in its capacity to heal. In a system stacked against them, Redwood and Aidan's power and talent are torment and joy, born of a determination to find their place in the world. So yeah, this sounds fantastic. Thank you so much to Tor.com for sending a copy. I'm looking forward to reading that. And then lastly, I have a box from Harlequin. They send me books for promotion on Instagram, which is fun, and I think these are for their like holiday romance promotion that they're doing. Yes, we have 3 romances. First up is 12 Dates of Christmas by Laurel Greer. I love a holiday romance, so these look really fun. Can 2 rivals create mistletoe magic? Then we have Christmas at the Chateau by Rochelle Allers. This one looks like a multiracial romance. The halls are decked for holiday romance at Bainbridge House. Christmas dinners on the table served with a side of romance. So we have an executive chef as our heroine and an estate caretaker for the hero. That sounds great. Lastly, we've got The Wedding Planner's Christmas Wish by Kara Coulter. And it says this is a wedding in New York story where a wedding planner makes every bride's dream come true if only she could magic her own fairy tale ending. After a devastating loss, she's kept everyone at a distance until Drew, owner of New York's ultimate wedding venue, and his 4-year-old daughter come along and steal her heart. So ready-made family if you're looking for some holiday romances. And since we're talking holiday romances, let's talk about the other two that came in the mail. I have another one from Harlequin. This is Just for the Holidays by Adriana Herrera. This is a snowed in at Christmas book from an author who I really love, and I was thrilled. So I had pre-ordered this book, and then they emailed me, and I was like, yes, I was already gonna buy it anyway, so please, sure, send it to me. I'm excited to read it. And then lastly, a PR company sent me Mistletoe Season by Michelle Major. This is a small town holiday romance, and I've generally really enjoyed holiday romances from Michelle Major in the past, so I think this will be great. Two lonely hearts finding what they really need for Christmas. If you're a fan of that, lots of options for you. Then I've got a kid's book that arrived from Quirk Books. This is The Wild World Handbook Creatures, How Adventurers, Artists, Scientists, and You Can Protect Earth's Animals by Andrea Dubbink. And yeah, this looked really cool. It's like an illustrated nonfiction book with a lot of great information about the world, the environment, animals, how kids can help. Thank you so much to them for sending along a copy. Tor.com has been really wonderful to me this year, and they unexpectedly sent me a package with 2 books that I love from an author that I love. This is Over the Woodward Wall by A. Deborah Baker and Along the Saltwise Sea by A. Deborah Baker. I had already read this. I now have already read this. I talk about it in my mid-month wrap-up. I really love these. This is a pen name for Seanan McGuire, and this is a novella series that she's writing that has this very meta quality to it. It's a children's series mentioned in her novel Middle Game, and I feel like if you like the Wayward Children series and you don't mind reading something that feels a little bit more middle grade to it, you'll probably really love these. I love them. I gave them both 5 stars. Thank you to Tor.com for sending me a finished copy. This was something that was already on my radar. It's always really nice when that happens. Another unexpected arrival was Cupcake by Cookie O'Gorman. This was sent from Entangled Teen, and I love this cover, and the premise sounds great. I didn't really know anything about it, but I think this like just came out. This is a grumpy sunshine YA romance with a plus-size heroine, but what I think is cool about it is that it's a plus-size heroine who has a lot of body confidence and is actually popular. So it's not like a sob story, it's not an insecurity story, it's like a fun becoming homecoming queen and falling for the grumpy, strong, silent guy in her high school, which I think sounds great. One book that was sent to me for review from the author is Winterset Hollow by Jonathan Edward Durham. This sounds really interesting. It is indie published horror, but that is a little bit of a genre blend. It's got some sort of fantasy elements to it, like dark fantasy. And apparently this was also a nominee for the Bram Stoker Award for Best First Horror Novel, which is cool. And yeah, this just sounded very much up my alley, and he reached out to me and I was like, yes, sure, I will read this. It's about a group of friends who go on a trip to visit the place that supposedly inspired one of their favorite books. And the book was about a group of animals preparing for their fall festival, except when they arrive, it turns out that maybe it's less than fictional and there's a hunt and things get creepy. So this sounds very interesting, like the kind of thing I would enjoy. So thank you to the author. I'll be reading and reviewing this in November. Then I have a stack of books later that I'll show you that I purchased at New York City Comic Con that I attended this year. It's in my city. I'm from New York, and it was fun. It was definitely a lot smaller this year than usual, which as it probably should be, but had a good time. And there were some cool author panels, and I will link a short video that I did up here talking about like some of the authors that I learned interesting facts about at panels. But one of the authors there was Marie Rutkowski, and she very kindly gave me an advance copy of her adult thriller debut, Real Easy. This is going on sale in January, and it sounds really interesting. It's a dark adult thriller. She is known for writing YA fantasy and is trying out moving into a very different space. A compulsive, tenacious, and unexpectedly hopeful thriller set in a Midwestern strip club, told in the spirit of Gillian Flynn and Tana French. Set in 1999, definitely excited to give this one a try very soon. And then lastly, I got the chance to go to the Brooklyn Book Festival, which they had back this year. It was mostly an outdoor event, and I purchased one book, which I'll show you later, but I also got a couple of advanced copies of books that sounded pretty interesting. One is a nonfiction title that just went on sale in October. This is Becoming Abolitionists: Police, Protests, and the Pursuit of Freedom by Derica Purnell. This sounded interesting to me because it's a topic I'd like to read more about. I'm not totally sure how I feel about the topic of police abolition, but I'm curious to read more, and this title sounded pretty interesting. It says the author draws on her experiences as a lawyer, writer, and organizer, and details her initial skepticism about police abolition due to her community's reliance on calling 911 when there was a crisis and her belief in the law. But in time, she realized calling the police was a placebo, only option available rather than the best option. So yeah, I don't know. This sounds really interesting. She's a human rights lawyer, writer, and organizer, and wrote this nonfiction title. So I'm curious about that. And then the other book goes on sale in November. This is God of Mercy by Okezi Nwoka. They are a non-binary author who wrote a novel set in uncolonized Igbo land, a powerful reimagining of a history erased. It says, with a sprawling cast of characters and lyrical prose, God of Mercy reframes the nature of tradition and cultural heritage. Establishing a folklore of the uncolonized, it is a novel born of the diaspora about wrestling with gods, confronting demons, and discovering one's true purpose. So yeah, those sounded interesting. They're being published from Astra House. It's like a small press, and I was intrigued. While we're there, let's talk about the books that I purchased at those events. I got one book at Brooklyn Book Festival. This is Six Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim. She is also the author of the Spin the Dawn duology, which I read and really enjoyed, and this cover is gorgeous. She was actually on a panel, which was really cool, and so I got my book signed from her, and I'm excited to read this. It's a retelling of a fairy tale about a girl whose brothers have all been cursed to be turned into cranes, and yeah, I don't know, hearing her talk about it, it sounded really interesting, so I was excited to pick that up. And then I picked up a few things at New York City Comic Con. I got these 3 single issue comics from an indie comics creator, and I actually have already read and reviewed these in my October mid-month wrap-up, so I'll link that up above if you haven't seen it. But this is The Search for Sadiqa, Volume 0, Volume 0.5, and Volume 1, and I definitely enjoyed these. Signed by the author. And then the other 3 books are also signed. I was able to meet the authors, and that was exciting. I decided to get a copy of A Lesson in Vengeance by Victoria Lee. I had an e-arc of this from NetGalley, and I really liked this. I feel like this is kind of a polarizing book, but I absolutely loved it. I thought it was fantastic, and I wanted to support the author, and she was there, so I got a signed copy of it, which is exciting. This is YA dark academia with a little bit of a witchy element to it, and this is dark. Like, it goes much darker than what I was necessarily expecting from YA, but I loved it. Also, this is a sapphic novel, and Victoria Lee is a trans woman author, so if you're looking to add that kind of diversity to your reading, I think this is a good one. I also decided to get a copy of a book that I'd been eyeing for a while anyway, and so when I found out that the author was going to be there, I was like, yeah, okay, let's go ahead and do this. I got The Nature of Witches by Rachel Griffin. This is another YA kind of witchy book, and just look at this book under the dust jacket. It's so pretty. She was really great. I heard her on a panel, and it was really interesting hearing about this. This contains like weather magic and is kind of a coming of age story. And then lastly, I got a standalone indie fantasy novel. This is Adolithial by Andrea Rose Washington. She was exhibiting, and I was like, yeah, let me like buy something that sounds interesting. This is a modern magical coming of age story for your not so typical teenager. So it's another YA fantasy, but this can be read as a standalone, which I think sounds cool. Some of her other books were series, so I was like, well, let me try the standalone. This follows a 16-year-old girl who has always lived a simple life until her mother's secret came to light. Now she learns that not only has everything to this point been a lie, but there's a hit squad after her. To escape their attackers, her mother sacrifices herself so that her daughter can escape. She and her best friend have to go and seek out the aunt she's ever known to try to find protection and figure out what's going on. This sounded really interesting. Then I have a couple of old arcs, like of books that are already published, that I got from a fellow New Yorker who I'm mutuals with on TikTok, Jenny, and I will link her down below if you guys want to go check her out. She's a bookseller in Tribeca and put up this thing to mutuals being like, hey, I have some stuff that I'm unhauling. Are you interested in any of it? And I was like, yeah, a couple of those have been on my radar. So I went and met up with her and she very kindly gave me these, which was very exciting. I have The Order of the Pure Moon Reflected in Water by Zen Show. This came out last year. It's a novella from Tor.com and I've always been kind of interested in it. I just think the cover is so pretty. I think this is queer too. It's like found family wuxia fantasy that combines the vibrancy of old school martial arts movies with characters drawn from the margins of history. Sounds great. And then also a nonfiction title that came out in 2019 that has been on my radar, and I'm so excited to have a copy of this. This is The Dark Fantastic: Race and the Imagination from Harry Potter to Hunger Games by Ebony Elizabeth Thomas. I love this cover and I've heard really good things about this book. I didn't realize how short it was. It's only like 175 pages long. I really need to read this. I've heard it's great. So thank you so much to Jenny for those. Then, like I said earlier, I did sell some books back to my local indie bookstore for store credit and was able to purchase 4 books using that store credit, which was exciting. I got a copy of Fool's Errand by Robin Hobb. This is the first book in the Tawny Man trilogy, and I'm actually replacing a mass market paperback copy that I had with this nice big UK paperback. This was used and I think it was like $8 or $9, which was great. So I follow Lindsay Ellis on YouTube and I really love her content and wanted to support her. Plus the premise of this sounds really interesting. It's like an alien first contact story set on Earth and the sequel is coming out soon. This is out in paperback, so I decided to grab a copy. I also picked up The Parable of the Talents by Octavia Butler because last month I finally read Parable of the Sower, which is the first book in this duology with my patrons, and I definitely want to continue on. So I got one of these beautiful new covers. And the last book that I got is something that I know is a big gap in my YA fantasy reading, I guess, and that is Graceling by Kristen Kishore. I really like these new covers they came out with, and I have had some people I trust tell me they think I would love this series based on my own preferences. So it is now on the TBR, guys. Then this month I had 3 books that were pre-orders. The first one is a debut novel from a friend of mine, fellow booktuber, an author-tuber. This is A Curse in Ash by Julie Xantopoulos. I think it's Xantopoulos. I'm sorry, Julie, if I'm saying your last name wrong, let me know. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce it. This looks amazing. I love the cover. It is her first book. Congratulations, Julie. I know this is like a big thing you've been working on, which is very exciting. And it looks incredible. This is steamy new adult fantasy with the fae, and I think it's polyamorous as well, if I'm not mistaken. So it sounds like fun. There's witchy stuff and fae stuff. If that sounds interesting to you, go check it out. Had to get that. And then Julie sent me some fun pre-order goodies. I got this cool signed book plate, which is lovely, and a Curse and Ash tarot card for Temperance. I love it. So yay, I'm so excited for her. Congratulations, Julie. I think this looks amazing. The other 2 pre-orders I can blame on fellow content creators. Rachel from Reads with Rachel convinced me that I should buy Iron Widow by Zirin J. Zhao. This sounds amazing. It's a YA sci-fi retelling of the real history of the one woman empress in Chinese history, but with like giant mech robots and a polyamorous relationship. And everybody who I know who has read this has just raved about it. A lot of people are saying it's one of their favorite books of the year. So I was like, okay, all right, I trust you. I'm getting a copy. So I did it. I pre-ordered it. And then because of Stephanie from the Books in the Freezer podcast, she used to have a booktube channel, but I think now she's pretty much just doing the podcast, but she came on my podcast to talk about horror, Chapter 3 podcast. I'll link it up above if you guys want to check it out. And she mentioned this book and I was like, ooh, that sounds really good. Let me also get that. It is a short story collection called When Things Get Dark, edited by Ellen Datlow. They are short stories from a bunch of amazing authors inspired by Shirley Jackson, which sounds really cool. Let me just read you some of the people in this collection that made me want to get it. Stephen Graham Jones, Shannon McGuire, Carmen Maria Machado, Josh Mallerman, Paul Tremblay, like heavy hitters, at least for me. So I was like, okay, yes, done. And also it's kind of beautiful. And look at this, it's got like glasses on the end papers and it's orange. Like that is such a gorgeous book. I love it. I've got a few more books and then my Book of the Month Club box. Target was recently doing this buy two, get one free deal that included pre-orders. So I had a couple pre-orders for next year. Get them in early, by the way, with supply chain stuff. Like if you want a book, you should probably pre-order it because it's going to be rough. But I put in a couple of pre-orders and there was a book that I really wanted. If you haven't seen it yet, I will link up above this vlog that I did where I watched a bunch of horror movies. And what inspired some of them, the slashers, was this book, My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. I originally had an e-arc on NetGalley and I really loved this book. And I think I want to reread it and then maybe watch all of the movies that are referenced here and do like a video project with it because I, surprise, surprise, discovered I apparently like slasher films. Like, who knew? And this is the book that inspired me to even start that project in the first place. So I wanted to own my own physical copy. It seemed like a great opportunity to do that. Then I picked up a book that is our Patreon book club for December. This is Mangoes and Mistletoe by Adriana Herrera. It is a little holiday romance novella. It is sapphic between two girls who meet on a baking competition show, and I've heard it's adorable, so I'm excited to read that. I also bought a copy of The Consuming Fire by John Scalzi. This is the second book in this whole trilogy. I read the first book, The Collapsing Empire, for this video that I'll link up above, where I read books recommended to me by celebrities on the Cameo app. That was super fun, and I absolutely loved the first book in the series and was like, yes, I know I want to continue, so I got book 2. Then another book that I bought because of Stephanie at the Books in the Freezer podcast that she had mentioned, because this was very on sale and I'm just super intrigued, was Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. So this is like ecological horror, I guess, or environmental horror. It sounded super interesting, has kind of a sci-fi element to it, and I definitely want to read it. I also bought a book because of Mara at Books Like Whoa. She talked about this book, and even though it wasn't a favorite for her, the way she talked about it, I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm going to love that book, so let me get a copy. This is Madam by Phoebe Wynne. It's like a gothic mystery that I think has a boarding school element to it. It just sounds very up my alley. It's set in the Scottish Highlands. It's got lots of tropes that are like buzzy things for me. And I was like, yeah, okay, let me get that. And then lastly, all of this discussion of horror and thinking back to my history of horror brought me back to remembering one of the books I remember being most scared by growing up. And I was like, you know what? It would be interesting at some point to do a reread of this and talk about it. So let me see if I can track down a used copy on like eBay. And I did. This is The Oath by Frank Peretti. Did anybody else read this? I like stayed up all night when I was a teenager to finish it because I was so scared of going to sleep without knowing what was going to happen. And yeah, I think this would be an interesting one to reread as a project at some point. Finally, I have my Book of the Month Club box. If you guys don't know, I do subscribe to them. I pay for the subscription myself, and I really like it. It's $15 a month, including shipping, for a new release or sometimes pre-release hardcover. And especially with supply chain issues these days, this can also be a good way to get your hands on books that might be difficult. Like I know some people have joined for that. It's not sponsored, but I do have a link down below, and if you are interested in joining and use my link, I get a free book, which is cool. So thank you to those of you who have done that occasionally. The other thing I really like about this is if you're not interested in any of the options, you can skip. You have 5 options a month in different genres, and usually a couple times a year I'll skip because I'm just like, I don't need these. Not this month. This month, my pick was The Perishing by Natasha Dion. It's like speculative literary fiction. A black immortal in 1930s Los Angeles seeks to recover the memory of her past in this visionary novel. It sounded really, really interesting. It's got like multiple timelines and time travel, and it looked very promising. And then this month I did get one add-on. I decided to get Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. I've been hearing really good things about this, and I'm curious to read it. I think this one is an isolated closed circle murder mystery that also includes this element of face blindness, and it just looked good, so I grabbed that. Those are all of the books that I got this month. There were a lot of them, and I feel like a lot of things that were sent to me, which thank you to everybody. I mean, it's great. A lot of exciting things to read. Talk to me in the comments down below. Let me know any of your thoughts or feelings on anything I talked about in this video. And for your question of the day, tell me about, okay, one of two things. If you've had the opportunity to meet an author and get a book signed and you want to share about that experience, leave it in the comments down below. or if you want to share about an author who would be like your dream person to meet and get your book signed from, if that's something that you think would be cool, leave that in the comments down below, because I definitely had a lot of like cool author interactions this month, which was exciting. If you guys like this video, it helps if you give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to see more. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you next time.